Hey, I'm Tom Askin. We are at Ponderosa Studios in Lafayette, New Jersey, and we are so excited to now feature the SSL XL-Desk. Maybe an atypical road for me. I went to St. Michael's College in Burlington, Vermont, and got a degree in business administration. And so I was playing music in a band down in the bars in Burlington every night. Right out of college, I formed a folk rock type of a acoustic band with bass drums and Hammond organ and saxophone. We bought a beat-up van and trailer and got on as a supporting act after cutting our teeth at the bitter end in New York for a couple of years. We actually cut our first record in this building before it was Ponderosa Studios in 1994. 10 years down the road from there, I had formed a great relationship with Sean Kelly and the rest of the gang from the Samples, and jumped into their camp and ran front of house for the Samples for a couple of years. Then there was a lineup change in the band, and found myself picking my six-string back up and playing guitar and singing and a little bit of piano in the Samples. So throughout that experience, we made a bunch of records. We recorded in Colorado and New York, and really where I started to cut my teeth with the engineers in the various studios. And then I was fortunate enough when the opportunity arose for this studio to be risen again. The facility was built purposefully as a recording facility and ran with great success for about 18 years or so, and then lay dormant for a couple of years. All that's really left are the pine walls, top to bottom. We've redone the whole facility. We're a retreat studio. We're in the countryside of Lafayette, New Jersey. We're an hour out of New York, but we had to position ourselves as a retreat facility for folks to come out, enjoy the accommodations, come out and stay and cut the record. And so we did the initial design, with the exception of holding off on our choice for an analog console. We wanted to really break in the room and not rush it, and make sure we made the right decision for that. Broke the room in for a year and went through the paces of doing our research and finding out what would be the best for an analog console for Ponderosa Studios. I got an email in my inbox that said SSL introduces the new XL-Desk. So we went in, we looked at it, and we said, my gosh, that's perfect for the space. Positioning ourselves and gearing towards an analog console, we were working for the first year, as I said, in the box. And so that's why we built the desk the way that we did, with outboard pre's, our artist mix controllers, wide variety of pre's that we had depending on the type of artist that was in. So that was our front end, and then mixing in the box at the back end. We found right out of the box, so to speak, great use of the XL-Desk for tracking. The built-in pre's on channels 1 through 8 are remarkable, especially for a lot of the stuff that we're doing for a rock record and even for jazz. So it did change our workflow a little bit. Depending on the genre of music that's coming through, we've got a wider palette to choose from. And more, even if it's not a country record, even if it's one of our engineers specializes in speed metal, he's using it, which was, I was thrilled to see, and then thrilled to hear the outcome as well. A couple different ways. One would be the wide variety of expertise that we have in-house here. So depending on the particular artist's openness, you've got a lot of creativity among a very wide variety of engineering, mixing and recording engineers here.
My specialty is alternative and indie rock. It's a genre where less is more. It's all about the raw sound, not overproduced, not huge reverb tails on everything. And so the focus is to get really good sound going in so that you don't have to do that much to it.
We went dark for a week when David Arnold came up from Pro Audio Boutique to do the install with us. Just before that, we had just finished delivering the master mixes to an artist for a 5-song EP that they had done. And I told them, hang on to the mixes. I didn't tell them why, but I told them, hang on to the mixes for a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to deliver you an alternate set of mixes and masters in a couple of weeks for your review. So we finished the install, and then I resummed the entire EP through the XL-Desk and sent it to them, waiting to see what's the reaction going to be. I knew what my reaction was right away. And I heard what I had hoped more than expected. The reaction was, we don't know what you did, but the depth, the color, the width, and the texture is amazing. What did you do?
Before the SSL desk came, it was only through the preamps and then into Pro Tools. The SSL desk came along and really, in a good way, turned a lot of it on its head. Some of the preamps that we used as standards for certain instruments like piano have now shifted over to the SSL.
When we were summing before the installation of the XL-Desk, we were using emulations. Bringing those stems back through here, there is, I mean, and you can hear it without trying to hear it. There is that width, that goodness, that, I don't know, something that you can just soak in. I mean, everybody hears about it, talks about it, and the rest, but when you're mixing and you're sitting in front of these reference monitors and you're A-Bing what you're doing, and of course we hoped for this. I mean, this is what we were banking on when we made the decision to bring this in. It's real.
We've been playing a lot with the VHD preamps, and then once we have everything captured and we get all of the analog goodness into the mix, we'll do our mixing, but the entire time that we're doing it, we'll be summing through the SSL desk and running through the master bus compressor.
It's a good question, and I think that changes depending on what you're working on, because we're all working on different genres. However, for the more complex mixes, of course, it's going to be just a little bit more challenging. You're bringing it through, and it's, you know, adding a color that you may or may not have intended coming in. But to me, that's a good problem to have, right? Because if we're coming here and it's giving it a little bit of a character, and you're sensing, okay, it's driving my overall landscape this way, then I accept the challenge of making a few more mix tweaks to have it suit that, than going back the other way. Folk, country, reggae, Armenian opera, which was beautiful, and some metal. We all have our favorite stuff that we work on. At the same time, we all like to keep fresh, and so work on a lot of different genres. I love to be able to come in and finish up mixing a folk project, and then assist John or Dave or Richie, one of my other engineers, mixing engineers, on a hip-hop record or a rap record or an EDM record.
For me personally, working with a lot of hip-hop and R&B, you don't do a lot of live tracking with those type of sessions. You have a lot of guys that come in and they have stems of production that was done with a keyboard or with an MPC or something of that nature. And to take those high-quality samples and just run them through the desk, it automatically adds a shine to it that you don't get running straight through Pro Tools. Just running it through the electronics helps, and maybe taking something that is a previously designed sample and running it through some harmonic distortion that's associated on the desk is great. My biggest thing for me personally with the desk is not only running those things through, running my vocal through after I run through my pre and distressor or whatever I want to do, running it all through, is the bus compressor at the end. I live and die by that. On this board specifically, I was big time on using the SSL plugin, and the plugin is great, but the real life application in the board is like nothing I've ever heard before, as far as a change to really glue everything together in the final product. That's my greatest part of this whole desk to me personally. Yeah. You use it on everything. I leave the headroom to use it on everything, and I make sure that it's on everything at all times.
Right. I also found that one of my favorite parts is the harmonic distortion. When we were tracking drums and piano, especially before, I mean, we would get great sounds using the pre's that we had, but then once the desk came in, just cranking up that harmonic distortion, it just brings out so much color.
It's not the distortion that you're thinking of when you hear distortion, because that would be god-awful on piano in most cases. I haven't encountered it yet. But the VHD preamps you can choose between a second and third harmonic distortion. It's very light. However, it adds a characteristic that I haven't been able to find in any kind of plugin. The attack is more present, and there's just there's a certain clarity both on the low end and the top end that just you don't get anywhere else. It gives you an analog flavor that before this we were using plugins for everything and getting really good results. However, there's something to be said about running it through the actual analog desk and then turning it up to that third harmonic just gives you this sonic characteristic that's very subtle. Again, I don't want you to think like fuzz or distortion, but you can hear the change. You can hear that warmth in everything you record.
Exactly. To me, it's not even about the change in sound. It's about the change of feel that the sound is giving. And it's giving a warmth. And my biggest thing is I turn around and I'll put it on and I'll have artists here who aren't behind the speakers all the time. And they, we as engineers hear music a little differently than anybody else does. We hear with a higher level of detail, I believe, than everybody else does. But when I put it on, they might not hear it, but then I turn around and I go, okay, well, let me shut it off and see if you get the feel of the sound to be different. And all of a sudden they'll be like, okay, it's missing something. I don't know what it's missing, but it's missing something. And it's that initial warmth that SSL, the harmonic distortion on this desk specifically brings to it that really changes the whole texture and sound. It makes it sound finalized when it hadn't before. It always felt like something was missing, but now it sounds like a complete project.
I absolutely love it. As everybody mentioned before, running through Pro Tools before using plugins, I mean, they're great at emulating an analog sound, but you just can't get it from that. Once we got this, it was a big game changer.
I think a big thing is something that Tom had mentioned, like being able to take things that were finalized, they were our final cuts, and the artists have the records, and they're already burning copies and selling them or doing whatever they want, and being able to just take that final mix and run it through and see the difference in sound. That's when you really understand what kind of a gold mine you've hit, when you get something like this and you add it into your studio and be able to say to people, we had all of these things and now we have a desk that's designed by SSL.
Do I like my XL-Desk? I love the XL-Desk, first and foremost because it has widened our palette, like I said. From a business standpoint, many of our inquiries that have come in have been, and what kind of analog desk do you have? What are you tracking through? What are you summing through? And so for the first year, it was that we're still deciding. So we knew it was important. We knew it was important not only from a sonic perspective and having those additional options, but from a business perspective, honestly, as well. I think the scales have been tipped because I'm loving it on the front and back end, both. The hybrid design that we've done, we've got a lot of real estate taken up over here. We've left a lot of real estate open for the artists to make it very comfortable here. So we were looking for that footprint that could accommodate both front and back end, everything that we're trying to do sonically, but fit in really nice and have everything that we need, but within a nice footprint. I have to say, you guys have done it.
As a final point, just to give you an idea of what this desk has done, we've had artists in here all the way up until last week. We will send everything through the board, and this is during tracking, raw, no plugins, no reverb, no compressors, that sound as close to a final mix as I've ever heard without adding anything else on. It's made our job both easy and more fun.